There are approximately 400 hours of Fallout 76 footage that have been released today or will be released over the next few days. That is a lot to go through in order to get a lot of information, and that's exactly what I spent my time doing today. I spent most of the day watching through videos, reading articles about the game and trying to find out as much as possible. I not only did this because I'm looking forward to the game and because I like to torture myself, but also to provide you with this information and summarize it in a way that doesn't force you to watch all these hours. In this particular video, I want to make sure that you get the information, but not get spoiled about the game. I don't want to show any visuals of the game here, there are plenty of videos to see that, and I don't want to spoil any of the story or anything similar, and really just the fundamental mechanics. I want to talk about how the game works, what you can do, what features you can expect, without taking away from this experience of going into the game for the first time and seeing everything for yourself and having this wow factor. I will make videos using various clips of the footage in the future if you want to see some more of it, but today is going to be spoiler free. Obviously, it has to quickly be mentioned that spoiler free is a bit in the eye of the beholder, and some people don't even want to be spoiled with the most basic things. If you don't even want to know how base building works, for example, then this would still spoil you in a way, but it should not be any information that takes away from your experience. And with that, let's get into it. We're going through this a little bit chronologically by the creators that I went through today, by their content, and we're gonna start with Oxhorn. From Oxhorn's video, I learned the following things. Items are available in the game to buy any sort of cosmetics, any skins, any outfits, and that was already known. Those can also be purchased with real money, but you get plenty through the game. What I saw, at least in the early levels, is that you get a lot of items for a lot of simple things that you do. The shop was not available yet, so we'll see more about that later. You also have your Pip-Boy, as in the last games, shouldn't be much of a surprise here. We also see very early in the gameplay that there are many small details for side stories, not necessarily even quests, but just things that are lying around, letters and stuff like that. So it's worth taking your time, really taking the world in and looking around all the small corners from the very start of the game. There's a lot of attention to detail here. Another thing that we see very early in the game is hacking, which works the same as in Fallout 4, so that should be nothing new to you if you've played the other Fallout games. The game also still has radio stations. You start out with 4, where you can listen to different kinds of music and more. This has also been talked a bit about already, but the entire game can be soloed. It is not necessarily designed as a solo-only experience, because in late game there are some benefits to teaming a little bit to get, for example, certain things quicker, but you can solo everything if you're ready for a bit more of a grind. The special system was changed a little bit. You now have the special points still that you put into the different attributes, but you get randomized perk cards that improve certain things. We'll talk a little bit more about that throughout this video. Many things remain the same as in Fallout 4, but some things have also been changed. For example, chems and ammo have weight in your bag now. The crafting and camp system is useful in many ways, not only to have a camp, but also to, for example, break down the scrap that you collect on the map and out of that get smaller parts that you can use for different things. This, in the process, also reduces the weight of the things that you carry, and you can also use your camp as a storage. Your weapons also degrade over time and you have to repair them, for which you can also use these materials. There are emotes in the game, this was already known to most, and these also allow you to indicate that you want to trade with someone. Now when it comes to trading, there's a bit of contradicting information between different content creators. Now what is known is that you can sell items to other players. What's not quite known is how the pricing works. It's either something you can adjust yourself or something that the game adjusts according to what the value of the item is and according to your charisma. So how exactly it's gonna work is something that we'll just find out later. Armor has been changed a little bit, so for example now you can wear a t-shirt plus a wall suit plus leather armor at the same time. Some slots don't take up the same space anymore basically. Power armors are still in the game as well. Drinking and eating has a higher focus in the game, especially early on, and you have to keep those factors in check. There are events in the game that happen at random times, which can sometimes be a little bit distracting if you're really trying to do another quest at the same time. There are things that are tied to drinking as well. The water can carry diseases, so there are different stages of water. Previously we only had dirty water and purified water, but now depending on your tech and whatever else you have, you can have cleaner or less clean water. A lot of the story is told through holotapes. And that also brings us to the second content creator, Many a True Nerd, who also talks about this a little bit more. There are NPCs in the game, again I don't want to spoil too much here, and there are also factions in the game, but many of them are not alive, so the holotapes take over much more of a role compared to conversation with actual other people in the game, as instead of those people you have the people being other players. Levels are not quite as important. You can easily fight a level 5 enemy while being level 2 very early in the game already, and even bigger level gaps are fine. In the same sense, while you have to focus on drinking and eating a little bit more, Many a True Nerd says that overall the survival metrics are very light. It's not the main emphasized thing of the game. Rad-away is also very available and does not have the same downside as it has in the previous Fallout games. There are legendary enemies, much like in the other Fallout games, which have higher loot, but at least in the early stages it seems like they're not necessarily a lot more dangerous. The VATS system is still in the game, but it's not quite the same. It doesn't stop time anymore, and you have to upgrade it with perks first to make it really useful. For example, at the start of the game you can't target any specific body parts, you can just target the whole body, and your aim will be relatively low. That doesn't mean it's not useful though. For example, if an enemy is slightly out of melee range, then you can use the VATS system to perform a small lunge with a relatively high chance to hit them, whereas if you just swung at them you'd have missed them because of the distance. There are certain things that you can get later into the game that make farming a lot easier because they basically automatically farm things for you in your base that you often need. So the further you get in the game, the more automatic things can become. Perks can actually be shared with teammates through higher charisma, which means you don't have to necessarily use your own special points to get certain perks. If you have 3 charisma, then level 1 perks are unlocked for your teammates, then with 6 it's level 2 perks, with level 9 it's level 3 perks. As such, investing a little bit into charisma can really pay off when you're playing a lot with teammates. You have perk card packs as well, this should be known to most, which give you random other cards. These cards have levels as well, so higher levels of perks will require you to have higher points in your specials as well, because otherwise you cannot equip the cards. If you have duplicates of a card, these can be used to create higher levels of a card as well. Something that should be more obvious to the MMO players but takes a while to get used to is that there is no way to pause the game in menus. One of the Bethesda employees even said that you should probably go into a quiet corner to listen to some holotapes if you want to catch up on the whole story, because otherwise you might just get attacked in the process. With sufficient luck, a guaranteed crit is still a thing, so you have a crit meter that slowly fills up and that gives you an amplified shot when it's full. A really cool feature in my opinion is that if you scrap things, you can discover new things through that. For example, if you scrap some pistols, you may learn about a new pistol part that you can afterwards build. PvP is only enabled after level 5. Until level 5 you're stuck in pacifist mode and cannot engage in PvP even if you want to. The map itself contains a mix of more lively and very empty areas, and this is very much on purpose because obviously the empty areas can be used more for players or for building things yourself. Doing timed side missions can actually give you good reputation with certain factions that will then help you out in combat sometimes. Different from other Fallout games, you can only have one chem active at a time, so one steroid to amp up your character. I earlier mentioned that you can fight level 5 enemies as a level 2 player. With the right equipment, sufficient grenades, etc., you can even fight level 20 plus enemies as a level 5 player. It will take some effort, but it's definitely possible. That doesn't mean that you can fight a horde of them, but the level difference here is not necessarily always as drastic as you might think in the first moment. Overall, the map is super accurate to actual West Virginia. We've actually seen various comparisons online already, and we've seen some of the videos directly comparing going into some of the buildings where the event took place and where you are as a player in Fallout in that moment. So this is super close to the original, and if you're from West Virginia, you're gonna recognize a lot of the things, which is really cool. Death is hardly penalized at all. You respawn nearby and you can pick up your scrap unless somebody else looted it away, so you really don't lose much at all. Your armor, on the other hand, when it goes down to no durability at all, can break. Radiation from enemies or other sources can mutate you. You can get bad mutations or bad radiation changes, for example taking 50% more radiation damage, but you can also get benefits like, for example, being able to shock enemies when they attack you, so not all is bad. However, the radiation will also lower your health bar overall, so you don't want to go too far with that. Now for some further information that different news websites provided. Engadget says that according to Bethesda, the story is not less important, but it's told differently. The author of the article, however, considered Fallout 76 a not story-driven game. TheCryptoFoxx on Reddit went through a whole bunch of items and things that you can find and things that you can use for a base. I don't want to spoil too much here, so I'm not going to say any specifics, but what I will say is that you can not only build things that are useful in the sense of that they benefit you in the game, but also things for recreational activities, things like instruments and drink machines and all kinds of cool stuff for even mini games, I guess, in your own base. PC Gamer points out that there will be another PvP mechanic aside of the one where somebody actively engages in PvP with you after you attack them and do a very low amount of damage to them. There is a specific PvP radio which you can tune into and which very much encourages PvP against other players, because everyone who tunes into this radio station is part of this PvP game. I'm not going to take anything away from you here and tell you how it works, but I can tell you that it sounds very cool and very promising. And I think this is what a lot of people will be using for PvP when they're looking to do it. Also, somebody on Reddit pointed out that Holotapes finally have a different, separate item category to make it less cluttered. Through Birth Movie's Death and Washington Post, we learn that the game will have long-term plans, or has long-term plans, but they won't be revealed yet. But on the other hand, there will be a very aggressive patch schedule. That means aggressive in the online world is typically something around a month or less between the patches, which would be very interesting to see for a game like Fallout. They also emphasize that it's not Fallout 5. Fallout 76 is basically another part of the Fallout series, and if there was a next Fallout, it would be Fallout 5. It was a single player. Game Informer says the multiplayer is pretty close to Borderlands. You can kinda do things together, but you can also just be on the same server and hang out in voice chat with your teammates, but not actually do anything with them. So you're very flexible, which I think is a good concept and is very fun in Borderlands at least. The verdict on PvP from players there is also generally very good. They say it was a lot of fun, very chaotic but enjoyable. The frame rate and stuff still have issues, but it's also still being worked on by Bethesda, so we will see how it turns out in the end result. Food and water also affect sprinting, which is interesting, so if you don't drink or eat enough, you will feel that on your character. PC Gamer has some different information. There will be no instances in Fallout 76 except for loot. The loot from corpses is instanced for every player, so everyone gets their own stuff, so that's not frustrating at all. PvP is slightly evened out between levels with something called resistance scaling, meaning you will kind of take a little bit less damage than you should, but at the same time you should still not pick a fight with a level 50 player as a level 10 player, as they will still have significantly better weapons and other tools to use. Across the world you can find treasure maps which have very minimal symbols on them, and you can find treasure through them. These become increasingly more difficult throughout the game and should be a challenge for those who are curious about them. There will be no reset for your special points, and they cap at level 50, so you kinda have to invest very wisely from the start. It's only a soft cap though, you can still level up further and get new cards, you just can't get any more special points. Washington Post also talks about a Shadowban system. If an enemy is really annoying you too much and being too frustrating, then you can Shadowban them. That way you won't be able to interact with them at all, you won't see them, and you're kind of disappearing for them essentially. Private servers and mods are still planned just as before, but will not be ready for release but come at a later point. Outside of that, but this is unconfirmed, I am also under the impression that there will be a big focus on building a late game. There are so many things that you can build, so many things that you can put into your base, etc. And it seems like that's gonna be one of the main parts that the game revolves around, especially with how it's otherwise laid out. So it'll be interesting to see what people do with their bases and if it keeps them in the game in the long run. If you happen to look at gameplay footage, also be aware that it's all been played on Xbox. This is not the PC version yet, so the graphics may look a little bit different there. And with that, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope this was interesting, gave you a good overview. If you're new to the channel, feel free to click the sub button and maybe the bell, it really helps me out. And other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow. Probably a S.P.E.C.I.A.L video as well as possibly another Fallout video, and this time with some clips. DukeSloth out.